So yesterday we were discussing about water and electrolyte balance. Told you today we'll discuss about what is water turnover and water balance. Now, water turnover literally refers to how water is being taken into your body and how it is thrown out of your body. Okay, so how it is being utilized. Now, intake of or ingestion of water into your body will be water intake occurs in two forms. Okay, so one is exogenous water that you consume from outside sources. This will vary in between zero point 0.5 to 5 liters, in the sense that in some areas people might drink more, in some areas they might not drink more. In some days, some people might forget to drink water altogether, or they might not be in a condition to drink water altogether. There are several cases. Okay, that is why the range is that big. 0.5 to 5 liters is the consumption rate of a human water consumption rate from external sources. So this can be from vegetables, this can be direct water and whatever. Okay, now whenever someone what you call has decreased amount of water in their body, there is something called thirst mechanism that gets activated. So whenever that mechanism gets activated, immediately the person will start feeling thirsty and they will preferably drink some water to quench their thirst. All right, that is one way through which your body will respond. We'll discuss about other ways as well in a bit. That is exogenous water. Then there is endogenous water. Okay, endogenous water is water that you get from metabolism. So metabolic pathways. Okay, you have several metabolic pathways in your body, and through them, whenever there is a metabolic reaction, one or the other, the byproduct of those metabolic reactions will be water. So all the water that you can yield from those metabolic reactions will come under endogenous water, because you are not consuming this from outside, it is being made in your body. All right, for example, if I metabolize 1 gram of carbohydrate, I'll get around 0.6 ml, and 1 gram of protein will give me 0.4 ml. 1 gram of fat will give me 1.1 ml. Again, these are estimates, but this is how you get it. Okay, if you break down 1 gram of carbohydrates, you end up making 0.6 ml of water in total. Okay, in the end what happens is the total amount of endogenous water that ends up being made in your body is around 300 to 350 ml per day. Okay, that 0.5 to 5 liters is also per day. So this much amount of water is made into your body, so substantial water. Now there needs to be a water output as well. This is only water intake, how you're taking water inside. Then there is water output, how you're throwing water out. Four main sources are there, which include, the first one is urine. Okay, generally a normal healthy individual will have a urine output of 1 to 2 liters per day. Okay, 1 to 2 liters per day is the normal urine output. Okay, now even if someone is not drinking water, your body will create urine because it has to throw out waste products. So it does not mean that if someone has completely stopped drinking water and they are vertical, not taking any other water source from exogenously, it does not mean that the person will not urinate. Okay, because your body needs to throw out several metabolic toxic products that is being formed at the end of metabolism, your body will invariably take endogenous water or whatever water it can grab, and it will throw it out using urine. So a minimum of around 500 ml of urine in a healthy individual will occur even if they are not drinking any amount of water. Okay, so there is that. And there are certain conditions. For example, if someone has diabetes, specifically diabetes insipidus, in those patients what happens is the amount of ADH, antidiuretic hormone, also called vasopressin, the amount of that hormone will sharply decrease, because of which if ADH decreases, the loss of water from the body will increase because it is antidiuretic hormone, right? If antidiuretic hormone decreases, you will have increase in what do you call, increase in water output from urine. The person will basically urinate more. So that is a special condition in DI, in diabetes insipidus. ADH levels decrease leading to increased urine output. Okay. As such, any type of diabetes, not just insipidus, even if it is mellitus, the person will have polyuria because glucose is a substance. See, diabetes may the primary factor that occurs insipidus rendo, yeah, mellitus rendo. You know that the amount of glucose that is present inside your blood will increase. So these, let's suppose these are glucose molecules. The amount of glucose molecules in your blood increases. This also means that more amount of glucose is being filtered out of your kidneys. Now, glucose is a very metabolically active product and it will not go out as such. So whenever it is being filtered out of your kidney, what happens is it will take water with it because it is so metabolically active and it is vertical. It has such an osmotic presence. What ends up happening is because it changes the concentration gradient, water will accompany glucose outside. So if you have more amount of glucose present, more amount of water will get out with it. So whenever someone is having diabetes, there is a good chance that they will start excreting glucose, or if you perform a urine analysis for them, you'll be able to find glucose molecules in that. And what will happen is whenever glucose is present in urine, it will carry water with it. So water will get excreted out of your body along with glucose. That will also increase urine output. Okay. So that was in mellitus. It even occurs in insipidus through this mechanism where ADH level are decreasing. ADH antidiuretic hormone. Okay, so that is one way, urine. Then we have skin. Second, let me. I hope you guys are understanding till here what is happening. If you're not, please feel free to stop me at any time. Okay, then the next one is skin. Now, the main method through which what they call skin is losing water, or how water is being excreted out of skin, is perspiration, sweating. Perspiration. Okay. Now, in general, a normal healthy individual will perspirate around 450 ml per day. Okay, that's about half a liter of water is lost through skin per day. Again, this will vary a lot depending on the surrounding temperature, depending on humidity, or if the person has fever. In all of those conditions, the amount and what do you call degree of perspiration, sweating will change. Okay, so that is one another way through which water can be lost. Sweating. Okay, then we have through lungs. Now, the breath that you exhale. Okay, if you ever observe, suppose you take a piece of glass and you exhale on that glass, you'll be able to see a little bit of water vapor present on that glass. That is because the air that you exhale is not dry. It is what you call wet air. It is saturated with water. Because it will be very hard for you to exhale out, or for you to breathe out any form of dry air. Okay, it will cause irritation. That is another way through which your body will excrete water out of your body. So almost 400 ml per day of water is lost through respiration. Okay, whenever you inhale and exhale, what ends up happening is the amount of what you call the amount of gas that you exhale, that will carry some amount of water vapor with it. You can easily measure it by what do you call checking the breath that you are exhaling out. If you try to take it against, so put some material, dark material close to you, something like glass, and exhale out on it, you'll be able to see some form of moisture present on that glass. Okay, that is because water is present in your glass. Water is present in your exhaled gas. Okay, you cannot breathe in and breathe out dry gas, dry air specifically. Okay, again, water loss in hot climate or fever is increased through lungs as well. If someone is having fever, or if they are living in a very hot environment, the amount of water that they are exhaling out will change. Okay, so that is one factor that will affect your lungs. The last one being feces. Okay, a little bit of water that enters GIT is lost through your intestines, around 150 ml per day. ठीक है, whatever feces someone is whatever excrement material someone is excreting out, that will contain a little bit of water, which amounts to around 150 ml per day in a healthy individual. Okay, now this amount will increase in diarrhea. If someone is having diarrhea or dysentery, the amount that is lost, the amount of water that is lost through feces will increase by several folds. So that is water intake and water output. Now I'll explain the balance behind them. What happens if what do you call, one or the other gets disrupted? Now कैसे start करेंगे? Right. So let's suppose there is water loss because of whatever reason. Let's suppose the body is losing water. Okay. Initially there is water loss. Whenever there is water loss, immediately what happens is ECF osmolality changes. ECF osmolality, to put it in a very simple term, means the density of your ECF. Okay. For example, let's suppose I take, for now forget about this and just look at this example. Let's suppose I have a bucket of water. Okay. And I have two buckets, or let's suppose I have the same bucket of water, and this is, let's suppose, 5 liters of water, and in this I mix 5 kilos of sugar. Okay. Now let's suppose I heat this particular bucket, or I basically try to evaporate the water. Okay. To the extent that the amount of water in this bucket has now changed to 3 liters. Okay. Let's suppose the water has decreased to, let me draw it a little. Hmm. Let's suppose this has become 3 liters now. The amount of sugar will not change. It will remain the same, 5 kgs, because sugar does not get evaporated, right? What happens to the sweetness of those two solutions? Did you understand the example first of all? The three of you. Am I not audible, or Reshma, Rashi, Ratama, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Then please answer. What did you understand the example? What I am trying to convey? I wasn't able to hear you. What about the other two? Are you guys even present? See, आप लोगों को क्लास नहीं होना था तो पहले बोलना था ना. I would have done with the portion altogether. It would be it would have been much more easier. There's two small concepts that are left. After that, your portion will be over. Fine. What happens is, this solution, here I'm taking one bucket with 5 liters of water, and I'm adding 5 kilos of sugar in it. Okay, and dissolving that sugar in the water. Let's suppose I heat that solution, and to the point that the water has evaporated and it has condensed, or condensed in a way that only 3 liters of water is present now. I've evaporated 2 liters out of it, but the amount of sugar is the same. Invariably this solution will be much more sweeter, right? This fellow will be more sweet because I have decreased the amount of water that is present. Imagine you making sugar syrup at home. Okay, if you take 1 liter of water and a cup of sugar in it and you start heating it, after a while the solution becomes thick. Okay, that happens because the amount of water present in that solution has decreased significantly, and along with that the sweetness of that solution has increased a lot because water has decreased. Here in ECF, what happens is the density of that of your blood or of your ECF, extracellular fluid, will significantly increase, because the amount of, let's suppose in with respect to your body, ECF is everything that is present out of your cell. Let's suppose I'm talking about interstitial fluid and plasma. Let's suppose this is the interstitial fluid present in between your cells, and this is another cell. Okay, let's suppose these are 2 3 cells, and you have interstitial fluid present like this. Okay, present in between them. This is still outside the cell, but in between the cells. Then you have plasma that is present in your blood. Okay, let's suppose there is a capillary running beside it, and you have blood in it which contains plasma. Okay, so this fellow has blood which contains plasma. Now whenever your water volume in the body decreases, invariably osmolality of your ECF increases. Osmolality is the amount of or how do I put it, the number of moles of present in 1 kilo of a substance, or number of moles per liter of a substance, that is measured in kilos. So for example, if I acha, have you ever come across the word osmolarity? Okay, osmolarity is basically the number of molecules present in what you call a liter of solution. This is measured in the number of molecules. Okay, this is number of molecules present in a liter of any particular solution. So if I take this particular, let's suppose the same previous example, that bucket with water, this will represent the number of molecules of sugar that is present in 5 liters of water. Okay, later on if I evaporate that water, what ends up happening is my osmolarity will increase, because the number of molecules have not changed. This will remain constant, but denominator decreases. So because of which what happens is, let's suppose this becomes 3 liters now. So what happens, number of molecules is same initially as well. Number of molecules was, let's suppose number of molecules present in your 5 kilos sugar was around 1000. Okay, rough example. And the amount of water present initially was 5 liters. So this will mean osmolarity is 200 mmol. Okay, now let's suppose I am drying that water, or I'm evaporating that water to an extent that now this has remained the same, but the denominator has changed to 3. So this will become 333 now, meaning osmolarity has increased. Okay, yahan se yahan, if you see from here to here, from 200 it has increased to 333. Osmolality, which we are discussing here, is a concept where uh, grams of, so instead of number of molecules being measured, here you will measure the grams of a substance, amount of the amount of the substance, or number of grams of the substance, weight of the substance, either way, weight of the substance present in a liter of water. So in this case we'll be measuring 5 liters of, क्या बोलते, how many molecules per gram is present. ठीक है, so यहाँ पर, one second, let me put it this way. Osmolality means number of molecules present in 1 kg, or divided by weight of solution. Initially we were measuring the volume of the solution, right, 5 liters. यहाँ पर we'll be measuring the weight of the solution. वो difference रहता है osmolality and osmolarity में. ठीक है, whenever we have what do you call, water being evaporated, either osmolality or osmolarity, both of them will increase. To put it in simpler terms, that solution becomes more denser. Okay, because let's suppose in your blood capillary, in your capillary itself, there was around 50 ml of blood. ठीक है, only this small capillary I'm talking about. Let's suppose initially there was 50 ml of blood and I have decreased the amount of water in that blood. What will happen? The relative amount of proteins and the relative amount of components that are present in blood, that will increase, because of which ECF osmolality increases. All right. The end product will be, because of this, see, if you're not understanding, you'll have to ask doubts. Nahi to mushkil. I cannot read your minds. Okay. So what ends up happening from here is, as ECF osmolality increases, three things will happen. Let me put it this way. The first thing that will happen is stimulation of thirst from your hypothalamus. Your thirst is controlled by hypothalamus. That is the first thing that will happen. Then redistribution of water from ICF, intracellular fluid. Okay. Other than that, another mechanism that happens is stimulation of ADH. Now all the three happen simultaneously. As soon as your ECF osmolality increases, the concentration of your blood increases, your ADH, it will stimulate certain receptors, because of which thirst mechanism kicks in, and redistribution of water from intracellular fluid, meaning all the water that is present inside your cell, some of the water will start leaking out, okay, because of concentration change, and ADH will be stimulated, meaning antidiuretic hormone levels will increase. If ADH level increases, it will cause what you call water to be retained. So this will directly cause water retention. It will retain more water into your body. Okay. If your thirst kicks in, you will obviously drink water. Increase in water intake. Okay. Someone starts drinking more water, and redistribution of water will directly cause increase in ECF water. So water is literally coming out of your cell into your extracellular fluid. All of this will cause osmolality to be restored. Okay. This is how your water balance works. I'll repeat once again, just in case you did not understand. Let's suppose water is being lost because of some particular condition. The amount of water that is present in a person's body, from, let's suppose, 42 liters, it has gone to, you know that 42 liters is the total amount of water present in your body. Let's suppose this has become 40 liters. Okay. Now to compensate those 2 liters, what your body does is, immediately as soon as the amount of water in your body decreases, the ECF osmolality increases. The density of your solution, the ECF, will increase because water volume has decreased. This will stimulate three things. It will stimulate ADH, so ADH amounts will increase. It will stimulate thirst, and it will start causing redistribution of water from ICF, from intracellular fluid. So water from inside your cell will start moving out. That causes ECF water. So from inside it is moving outside, meaning the outside is ECF, right? So water will start coming into your ECF, increase in ECF water. If thirst gets kicked in, you will start drinking more water. So water intake increases. If ADH is stimulated, water will get retained. You will not throw out as much water, and your urine output will decrease basically. Because of all of this, what ends up happening is the amount of water in your body increases, and specifically the amount of water that is present in your ECF increases, because of which osmolality is restored. So your what do you call, density of ECF will become normal. Okay? That is how water balance works. I hope you understood this. Not even sure how many of you are listening, but
Yes, sir.
okay. So now coming to electrolytes, there are three important electrolytes that are present in your body. Actually, there are several, but we'll be discussing 2 or 3 of them. Firstly, coming to sodium. Okay, the normal amount of sodium, the normal value of sodium is around 136 to 145 milliequivalents per liter of water. Okay, please be careful of the units. As you change the units, the amount will change. All right, sodium का normal value इतना है. The function of sodium is to regulate ECF volume. So it will regulate ECF volume and distribution, as well as helps in transmission of nerve impulses. Okay, whenever you want to send messages through your neurons, you need sodium because there is a constant exchange of sodium and the constant exchange of ions whenever there is neuronal transmission. All right, it also helps in maintaining blood volume. Now the sources of sodium will include, you have maize, ragi, wheat flour, then radish, you have spinach, then mutton, cauliflower, okay, and what do you call this thing, your Bengal gram. Okay, all of these are good sources of sodium. So one second. Yeah, we don't have a lot about sodium, a little bit about each of the electrolytes. Then coming to potassium. Okay, the normal amount of potassium that is present in your blood is 3.5 to 5 milliequivalents per liter. MEQ per liter. Okay, per liter of blood. The function of potassium will be maintaining ICF osmolality. Maintaining ICF osmolality. As a rule of thumb, always remember that the amount of potassium that is present inside the cell will be more than the amount of potassium present outside the cell. It will be exactly opposite for sodium. The amount of sodium present outside the cell will be more than the amount of sodium present inside the cell, until and unless there is a change in concentration or there is a diseased condition. As such, always what happens is the amount of sodium that is present outside the cell will be more than the amount present inside, and for potassium it will be exactly opposite, more will be present inside the cell. So it helps in maintaining intracellular osmolality, it helps in nerve impulse transmission, and it helps in regulating acid base balance. Acid base balance. Other than this, this fellow will also help in cardiac impulse transmission and skeletal and smooth muscle functions. So all of those are some of the important functions of your potassium. You find these in, so sources of potassium will include bajra, you will have spinach, then bananas, amla, lemon, peas, green gram, red gram, so a few dals. So I'll not list all of them, okay? And sapota. You have several sources. These are some of the common sources that you find easily. So that is about potassium. Then coming to calcium. Now the amount of calcium normally present in your body is 4.5 to 5.5 milliequivalents per liter. Milliequivalents per liter. Okay, the main function of calcium is maintaining bone health, and it will also help in maintaining bone health, bone health, teeth health. It will also help in what do you call, how should I put it? It will also help in movement of your skeletal muscles. Helps in skeletal muscle contraction. Have you been taught myology आपके anatomy and physiology में? How, what is skeletal muscle? What is the anatomy of skeletal muscle? How movement of skeletal muscle occurs? No, yes. Okay. Sources of your what do you call, calcium will be obviously milk. One of the best sources of calcium is buffalo milk or cow's milk. Okay. Then you have some oils and seeds. So sesame seeds and ragi, as well as small fish, small dried fish. You have them in carrots, carrot leaves specifically. Okay. And amaranth leaves, drumstick leaves. These are all good sources of calcium. Another function of calcium, which is quite important, is that your parathyroid hormone and calcitriol increases serum calcium levels. Calcitonin decreases serum calcium levels. So they will gets influenced by parathyroid hormone and calcitriol. Calcitriol is what you call, another form of your vitamin D. Your vitamin D has three forms. We discussed this in lipids. It has D1, D2, D3. This is D3, calcitriol. Okay, the active form of your vitamin D is called calcitriol. So these are three important what do you call, this thing, electrolytes. Now coming to chlorine. The normal amount of chlorine present in your body is 98 to 108. 108, 105 will vary a little bit from person to person, but normally it is this much mmol per liter. Please be careful of the units that are being used. The normal function of chlorine is it helps in HCl production. So HCl or hydrochloric acid is something that is present in your stomach, and it helps in digestion. So for that you obviously need chlorine being one of the important components. It will help in regulating ECF volume. Okay. It will also help in regulating ECF volume and acid base balance. Right. It will also help in buffer. So you have something called oxygen carbon dioxide buffer in your body. You have several buffers in your body. One important buffer will be your oxygen carbon dioxide buffer, which helps in exchange of oxygen in your RBCs. That will employ chlorine as a mediator. Okay. In that reaction, if you see how buffers work, especially how the buffer of respiration works, the one with oxygen and carbon dioxide, you see that chlorine plays a very important role in that. Sources of chlorine will include obviously table salt. Okay. Even for sodium, sea salt and seaweed. You have tomatoes, lettuce, that is celery, and olives. Okay. All of these are good sources of chlorine. Also rye. So these are some of the important what you call electrolytes that are present in your body. You will have more, but it is pretty much basic. I've only covered the important ones. You will have five, six more. You will have phosphorus, magnesium, bicarbonate. All of that will be present, again depending on what is present in your textbook, and depending on the question that is being asked. Generally, it will not be a very big answer that is asked with respect to electrolytes as such. But in case they do ask, you only need to mention what is the electrolyte, what are their normal levels, what is their function, two or three important functions, and their sources. All right, if you list all of them, it will become a pretty big answer. Take a piece of paper or a notebook and write down what all what you call electrolytes you can list out, so that later on it will be useful whenever you are trying to revise and all. Right. So with this, we have completed